Meet Renata. She's 45, and this past March, her net worth crossed $500,000 for the first time. No fireworks, just a number on an app that finally started with a 5. By almost any measure, Renata's doing better than most. But here's what nobody tells her about this exact moment. $500,000 isn't a finish line. It's the point where money stops behaving like a paycheck and starts behaving like weather. It can now move more in a single bad month than she earns in 3. Most people who hit this number make one of 3 quiet mistakes that cost them their next $500,000. They get comfortable, they get greedy, or they get scared and let the number just sit there, rotting slowly. Renata is about to make one of those mistakes without realizing it. So before you celebrate your own 500K, or your 300K or 200K in whatever currency you're counting in, watch what actually happens at this number, because it's not what you'd assume. At $20,000, a bad month costs you a vacation. At $100,000, a 10% drop is $10,000, annoying, recoverable. At $500,000, that same 10% drop is $50,000. For most people anywhere in the world, that's most of a year's take-home pay, gone in a matter of weeks. You physically cannot outsave a mistake this size anymore. Your portfolio has gotten bigger than your paycheck's ability to fix it. That's the actual shift at this milestone. Your income built the first $500,000. Your behavior decides whether it becomes $1.5 million or slides backward. Let's follow 3 people who all crossed $500,000 in the same year, 2024. Ordinary incomes, no inheritances, no startup exits, no lottery tickets. Renata, 45, a physical therapist earning $88,000 a year, got there the slow way, maxing out retirement contributions for 16 straight years and never touching them. Devin, 39, a marketing manager, also hit 500K, but his number is scattered across 4 old retirement accounts from past jobs, a chunk of company stock he's never rebalanced, and a checking account holding way more than it needs to. Sophia, 51, an ER nurse, inherited a third of her number and saved the rest. She keeps almost all of it, $410,000, sitting in a savings account earning 4.3%, because after living through 2008 in 2020, cash feels like the only thing she trusts. Same headline number today. 5 years from now, these 3 will not be in the same universe financially. Here's why. Renata keeps 85% of her money in a low-cost global index fund and adds $900 automatically every payday. She never has to decide to do it, it just happens. At a 7% average annual return, her money roughly doubles every decade untouched. Even if she never added another dollar, her $500,000 crosses $1 million in a little over 10 years on compounding alone. Add her monthly contributions on top, and she gets there closer to year 7. Renata checks her account on the first of the month and closes the app. She's never once sold during a downturn. That single habit, boring, automatic, uneventful, is doing more work than any stock pick ever could. Devin's story is quieter and more expensive. Buried in one of his old accounts is a fund charging a 1.4% annual fee he agreed to a decade ago and never looked at again. On $500,000, that's $7,000 a year, every single year, market up or down. Over the next 20 years, that one overlooked percentage will cost Devin somewhere north of $150,000, money that simply evaporates into a statement he never opens. Devin isn't careless, he's just busy, and fees are built to hide in plain sight. The fix costs him one afternoon. Read every statement, find every fee, and move that money into funds charging closer to 0.1%. That single move alone would put roughly $6,500 a year back in his pocket. Sophia's path feels the safest, and it's quietly the most expensive of the 3. She's got $410,000 sitting in cash, earning 4.3%. Inflation, running around 3%, means her real return is closer to 1%. Meanwhile, Renata's money is compounding near 7%. Run that gap over 20 years on the same $410,000, and the difference isn't small. It's the gap between roughly $500,000 and well over $1.5 million. Sophia isn't reckless. She's frightened, and that fear has a real cost. She's confusing feels safe with is safe, and inflation is quietly picking her pocket a little more every single year she doesn't move. Here's the first thing you should actually do the moment you cross this number. Freeze your lifestyle exactly where it is. The moment the number hits 500K, the brain whispers something dangerous. You've made it. That whisper is how lifestyle creep starts, not with a yacht, with a slightly nicer everything. A bigger car payment, a few more subscriptions nobody remembers signing up for. Raise your monthly spending by $1,500 and you've quietly redirected $18,000 a year away from your future. Invested at 7%, that $18,000 a year becomes over $250,000 in a decade. The nicer lifestyle didn't cost $1,500 a month, it cost a future $250,000. Once the number feels big, ordinary returns start to feel boring, and boredom gets expensive. That's when the calls start. A friend of a friend with a can't-miss private deal, a pitch promising 15% guaranteed, no real risk. Here's the rule that never breaks. Guaranteed and double-digit returns do not belong in the same sentence. Every extra point of promised return is hiding an extra point of risk you just can't see yet. Nobody blows up a solid financial position slowly. They usually do it chasing one exciting yield. At this level, the job isn't to get rich, it's to not lose what took over a decade to build. If you recognized yourself in Renata, Devin, or Sophia, drop it in the comments. Which one hit closest to home? Stick around because the next few mistakes are the ones that quietly wreck the most portfolios, and most of them have nothing to do with picking the wrong investment at all. Here's a risk most people have never even heard of. Sequence of returns risk. Two people can earn the identical average return over 20 years and end up worlds apart purely based on when the bad years land, especially once you're withdrawing money. Picture two retirees, each starting with $1 million, each withdrawing $45,000 a year, each averaging 5% annual returns over 20 years. The only difference, one hits a market downturn in year 2, the other hits it in year 18. The early downturn retiree can end up several $100,000 poorer. Same average return, same withdrawals, just different timing. If you're within a few years of retirement or a big withdrawal, keeping 1 to 2 years of expenses in cash isn't overly cautious, it's armor. It's what keeps you from being forced to sell investments at the worst possible moment. At this size, where your money sits matters almost as much as how it grows, and this applies no matter which country's system you're operating in. Most tax systems around the world offer some version of the same two tools, an account where growth is never taxed again once it's in, and an account where you get a deduction now but pay tax later. A dollar, euro, or pound sitting in the never taxed again bucket is worth more than the same amount sitting in the taxed later bucket. Put your fastest growing investments inside the tax-free growth accounts your country offers. Keep slower income-generating assets in the tax-deferred ones. This one reshuffle, called asset location, can add real years of spending power in retirement, and most people have simply never mapped it out for their own accounts. If you're not sure what's available to you, this is one conversation with a fee-only advisor or accountant that tends to pay for itself many times over. Here's one most finance channels skip entirely, and it matters more the bigger your number gets. Currency risk. If every dollar, euro, or rupee of your $500,000 is sitting in one currency in one country's stock market, you've made a concentrated bet without realizing it. Devin's entire number is tied to one country's market and one currency. If that currency weakens against others he might eventually spend in, say if he ever relocates, retires abroad, or simply wants to buy imported goods, his real purchasing power can shrink while his account balance stays flat or grows. The fix isn't complicated. A globally diversified index fund spreads your exposure across dozens of countries and currencies automatically, so no single economy or currency swing can quietly erode your number. You don't need to become a currency trader, you just need to not accidentally bet everything on one country doing well forever. Most people at this level get their cash position backward in one direction or the other. Sophia has $410,000 sitting in cash, quietly losing to inflation. Someone else might hold too little cash and get forced into selling investments during an emergency. The right cushion is usually 3 to 6 months of expenses, enough to sleep at night, not so much that inflation eats it alive. If Sophia moved $370,000 of that cash into a diversified portfolio and kept $40,000 liquid, her money goes from quietly losing to actually compounding. Once the number gets large, your brain starts treating it as an identity, not an account balance. Renata could check her portfolio 3 times a day if she let herself. A normal 2% swing on $500,000 is $10,000 moving before lunch. Watching that happen is a fast road to panic decisions. There's also comparison. Once you've got $500,000, you notice everyone who has more: a friend with a bigger house, a cousin with a hotter stock tip, a stranger online flexing a portfolio screenshot. None of that has anything to do with your actual number or your actual goals. The only race that matters is your money against your own future needs, nothing else. The people who do best at this level are almost boringly calm. They check rarely and react less. The market quietly rewards patience and taxes anxiety, and your own emotions are the biggest fee you'll ever pay. Once there's real money, it needs protecting from lawsuits, accidents, and paperwork gaps. Devin has no updated beneficiaries and no will. If something happened to him tomorrow, his $500,000 could sit frozen in legal limbo for the better part of a year while his family sorts it out. An umbrella insurance policy, often $1 million of extra liability coverage, costs around $200 to $300 a year in most markets, and it protects the entire $500,000 from a single bad accident or lawsuit. Most people insure a $25,000 car and leave a $500,000 net worth completely exposed. If you've moved countries, hold assets in more than one place, or have family across borders, this is worth an actual conversation with a cross-border estate specialist. The paperwork gaps get more expensive to untangle the more countries are involved. The biggest threat to Renata's, Devin's, and Sophia's money was never the market. It was each of them, quietly, without meaning to. Here's the twist. The moment you cross this number, your job shifts from earner to guardian. For years, the task was to hustle, save, and push the number up. Now the number is big enough that your best move is often to do almost nothing at all. At $500,000, the market can move more in a single day than you can save in a year, which means you can no longer save your way out of a mistake. You can only avoid making one in the first place. Renata did almost nothing for 5 years and watched her $500,000 head towards $1.5 million. Devin fixed one overlooked fee and saved himself 6 figures. Sophia moved her cash once, then left it alone, and finally started beating inflation. None of them got there by being brilliant. They got there by refusing to be careless. Wherever your own number sits right now, 50,000 or already past 500,000, in whatever currency you're counting, the lesson is the same. The habits that get you to a number are not the habits that keep it. Getting there rewards hustle. Keeping it rewards restraint. Almost nobody teaches the second part. If this showed you something about your own money you hadn't considered, subscribe. There's a lot more of this coming.